Hollywood took two of the coldest killers this country's ever produced and somehow turned them into a love story that many people root for. And it worked. The film from 1967, Bonnie and Clyde, written by David Newman and Robert Benton, starring Faye, Dunaway, and Warren Beatty, gets called one of the greatest movies ever made. According to Jeff Guinn's biography, Go Down Together, it's also less than 5% accurate. So that means about 95% of what people think that they know about Bonnie and Clyde, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, it never happened that way. Not the way they say it did. And the real version is darker, uglier, a whole lot more blood than Hollywood wanted on the scene. So I'm Mr. B and welcome back to the Hidden Lens. So we're going to start with something simple, like how tall these two individuals were. The movie put Faye Dunaway at 5'7" and Warren Beatty at 6'2". Tall, gorgeous, the kind of couple you'd notice walking into a room. The real Bonnie and Clyde stood 4'11", and Clyde came in at 5'4". Back then, the average woman ran about 5'3", and the average man was about 5'8". So these two were on the small side of small, and that's the least of what got fudged. The film sells you Clyde as a sweet young man pushing into crime because the Great Depression left him no choice. The system failed him, so he picked up a gun. Makes for a good story, right? Problem is, none of it's true. Clyde was stealing chickens when he was 13 years old back in 1922, a good 7 years before the Depression ever reached Texas. Crime was just a family trade. Out of 7 Barrow kids, that's his brothers and sisters, 5 of them ended up convicted felons. The Depression didn't make Clyde into anything. He was already cooked long before the banks went under. Y'all follow me here? Because in 1930, they sent Clyde to Eastham prison farm down in Texas, one of the meanest spots in the whole state. He showed up small, but good looking and fresh faced. Exactly the kind of kid the worst men inside go hunting for. A prisoner called Big Ed Crowder made Clyde his target, beating him over and over again. And one day, Clyde caved Crowder's skull in with a lead pipe. Well, that was a good thing. That was his first planned killing. And another inmate who was already doing life took the fall for it. So this Big Ed dude probably was not someone people liked. But Eastham wasn't finished with him. To get himself bumped off that work detail and out of the daily beatings, Clyde had a buddy Clyde and his buddy chopped off 2 of his toes just because. Turns out mutilating themselves to get out of labor was common enough that the prison brass knew exactly what they were looking at. A friend of it put it best later. Somebody told me that friend was his sister, but Clyde walked in a schoolboy and walked out a rattlesnake. Yeah, I think schoolboys end up at Eastham prison farm. Rattlesnakes, I think he was where he needed to be for a little bit. And now somebody was about to open the cage and let him out because they paroled him in February 1932. That's when he found Bonnie again, because they already knew each other, and the 2 of them kicked off a run that lasted about 21 months and left about 13 people dead, 9 of them lawmen. This was the public enemy era, 1931 through 1935, when fellows like John Dillinger owned the front page. And here's a kicker for you. Dillinger himself called Bonnie and Clyde a couple of snot-nosed punks who were giving bank robbery a bad name. Which brings me to the bank robbering, because that's another thing the movie handed you wrong. It paints them as slick bank robbers. There ain't nothing slick about either one of them. Kind of like Robin Hood sticking it to the crooked money men who were squeezing regular folks, what they wanted to portray. Author Nate Hindley doesn't dress it up. He says they never robbed banks. What they actually did was hit the easy stuff, little grocery stores and gas stations out in small towns. The kind of place where working people and broke people did their shopping. The biggest haul never even cracked $1,500, so they weren't robbing the rich at all. They were robbing the poor. The people they were sticking up were just as poor as everyone else. Speaking of the gang, it wasn't always the same faces. At different stretches, you had Clyde's brother Buck Barrow in there until he got whacked, along with Buck's wife Blanche till she got caught, who lived through the bloody finish. Well, no, not quite. Their bloody finishes, well, one of them's. And later wrote it all down in the memoirs. That was Blanche. Then there was a rotating bunch of young recruits like W.D. Jones and Raymond Hamilton. And Hamilton came through Eastham, same as Clyde did. They graduated, but different classes. But his recklessness got so bad it spooked even Clyde, though. Now, the violence. The movie shaves it down to reluctant self-defense. Like every shot was forced out of them, somebody squeezing their neck, right? Everybody who was actually around back then tells a whole different story, and it's cold. On Christmas Day, we're going to do this on Christmas Day, in 1932, a 16-year-old named W.D. Jones had been in the gang for about a day. He and Clyde gunned down a young family man named Doyle Johnson over his car. They were still in his car in Temple, Texas. 11 days after that, Clyde killed Tarrant County Deputy Malcolm Davis when the gang stumbled into a police trap that wasn't even meant for them. I tell you, those police were so good they were catching all kinds of shit. Come April of 1933, in a shootout up in Joplin, Missouri, the Barrow brothers and Jones killed two more officers, Detective Harry McGinnis and Constable J.W. Harriman. And there's the part of all this Hollywood scrubbed out completely. They just didn't want to do it. June of 1933, Clyde's flying down some rural Texas road at 70 miles an hour and blows right past a sign, because he can't read, warning him of a bridge ahead that's under construction. The car flips over into a ravine and the battery acid comes pouring down onto poor Bonnie's right leg, eating the flesh clear to the bone in some places. She spent the last year of her life barely able to walk. Man, if somebody did that to me, I wouldn't hang out with them no more. No, Clyde was carrying her around half the time, though, because she couldn't freaking run, I guess. But that's back in that 1967 film. It never shows you Bonnie's limp, not one time. Truth is, they both limped. Clyde off of those toes he had taken off, and Bonnie off the burn that Clyde caused. These weren't the smooth, athletic outlaws Hollywood dreamed up. You're looking at two cripples, desperate people, dragging a trail of dead bodies across the middle of the country that they couldn't carry. The worst one came on Easter Sunday, April the 1st, 1934, two young Texas highway patrolmen, H.D. Murphy and Edward Wheeler. They rode up on their motorcycles outside Grapevine, Texas, figuring some motorists needed some help because they were broke down and needed a hand. So both of them got off their motorcycles and both of them got murdered for it. A farmer who said he watched it claimed he saw Bonnie Parker laugh at it all the way as Murphy's head bounced like a rubber ball on the ground while she shot him. That farmer's story got picked apart and discredited later on, but the two officers were dead just the same. And there was nothing soft about how it happened. The film saves one of the biggest lies for the Texas Ranger Frank Hamer. It shows him as a vain, bitter man who gets caught and humiliated by the gang and then chases them down out of pure spite. That didn't happen. I'm going to say it 3 times. You got it, right? That didn't happen. That shit did not happen. Hamer never laid eyes on Bonnie and Clyde until he shot them. All right? First time he saw them, he shot them. He didn't get caught. None of that bullshit. He was a respected old hand when it came into the manhunt on February the 10th, 1934, and put in 102 days running these some bitch down step by step. His widow took the filmmakers to court for defamation and won. There's a 2019 Netflix picture called The Highwaymen with Kevin Costner playing Hamer, and well, they tried to set the record straight, and most folks consider it a lot closer to the truth. That had Woody Harrelson in it too. He was a good one. So what finally finished the gang, it wasn't slick police work, it was a sellout. One of the newer recruits, Henry Methvin, who had his own daddy cut a quiet deal with the law. Methvin's father handed Hammer's team the where and the when they'd been chasing. And that's what dropped the net. It wasn't quite a net, more like lead net. The end came on May the 23rd, 1934, around 9:15 in the morning, right after they stopped off and got them some breakfast. On a country road near Gippsland, Louisiana, Hammer had a 6-man posse with him. Ted Hinton was in on it, and here's the strange part. Hinton was a Dallas deputy who actually knew Bonnie back before she was bad. She served him food. Now, riding with him were Prentice Oakley and Manny Galt, Bob Alcorn, and Henderson Jordan. They set their ambush and let loose with about 130 rounds to 160 rounds. Oakley got the first shot off. Caught Barrow in the head, right there in the noggin. Yep, that didn't work for anybody but, Oakley and the posse, but it sure didn't work for old Barrow. The autopsy counted 17 entry wounds on Clyde and 26 on Bonnie, headshots included, and one round that snapped Clyde's spine right in two. Some researchers figure the real number ran past about 50 holes apiece, and what happened after the shooting tells you exactly how the public felt about them, because the crowd that swarmed the death car was downright mean and wild. People were scooping up spent shell casings off the road. They tore off chunks of Bonnie's hair and pieces of her dress, and one fellow even went to go it says that Claude's trigger finger, but I've also heard it was ear. I've heard the ear a whole lot more. It doesn't matter. Whack off both of them. He don't need them no more, right? So when officers finally got the car cleared, they found a regular armory in there, sawed-off shotguns, stolen rifles, a pile of handguns, a whole lot of ammunition, and 15 different license plates from all over, because they've been stealing cars for years. The funerals were their own kind of circus. Bonnie's drew 20,000 people, and Clyde's about 15,000. And even at death, the two of them couldn't end up together because Bonnie's mama wouldn't allow it. The way she reported it, he had her when she was alive, and he wasn't going to have her in death. Bonnie never did divorce her first husband even, and she was still wearing his wedding ring the day she died. She kept apart Clyde right up to today. There's an empty plot sitting next to his grave, still waiting on her. This can be a cold day, says her mama, but her niece wants it to happen sooner rather than later. That 1967 movie turned these two people into saints, rebels, standing up against a rotten system. Nate Hensley said an honest version would have just shown them for the scumbags they were. They weren't Robin Hoods, because there ain't but one Robin Hood, and they aren't it. Nobody robbing broke grocery store clerks is a romantic rebel. What you really had was a pair of violent criminals who stole from working people, killed at least 13 human beings, and put the fear of God into towns all over the heartland. The real Bonnie and Clyde story was never a love story. It's about what happens when the myth gets bigger than the facts. And we sit back and let Hollywood pick our heroes for us. Now, if this one stuck with you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment below and let me know which piece of the Bonnie and Clyde story you want me to pull apart next. I'm Mr. V, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Hidden Lens.